Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Not to Talk About podcast, episode 27 now. And we're back again to reflect on yet another win to extend the unbeaten start. But before all of that, as always, Tom, how are you, brother?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. I'm really good. Like you say, always happy after an unbeaten run. And obviously we had a little one last season, but let's hope this one can be as good as the one the season before.
Exactly, man, exactly. But yeah, let's not waste any time. Let's dive straight into it. Obviously we've got a certain David McGoldrick up front who just can't seem to stop scoring now. Instead of going through his goals as a collective, we'll go through it one by one as we always do. Talking about the first one first, obviously, and what a goal it was. I mean, pretty symmetrical to the one that he scored at Swindon the week before, but I'd probably say this one was the pick of the bunch. But yeah, I think with Didzy now, he's starting to show that he's back. He's back to his full best. Maybe he was overplayed last season. Maybe that was the case, but he's starting to definitely look like he's going to stake a claim to start many more games this season. But let's get your thoughts on that first goal.
Yeah, well, briefly, just on Didzy, normally it's you that gets predictions right, but I'm actually going to say that I did say towards the start of the season, I think Didzy can have a big role this year. I think it might have been the episode with Gab. I said, Didzy's going to be one to watch this season, and I think he can be back to his best. I think a big part of that reason is because last season he came in, obviously, massive expectations. It Didzy, not just that, he'd just come off an unreal season for Derby in League One. So you're thinking, God, we're getting a player who's just torn League One up. I think what the difference was is he played in a different position. For Derby, he played up front. Yes, he did drop in and come deep to get the ball like he does all the time. That's how he plays. But he was the striker. For us last season, he was behind Langstaff. So you're not going to drop Langstaff at all. So it was difficult for him. He's in a different role. There's already another goal scorer in their team as well. And we scored loads of goals. I know this season we've got Jatta in the team. Obviously, he hasn't played for a couple of games. Hopefully, he's all right. But I think if Didzy's given that more prominent role, he can do that, and he's shown that last couple of games. I think the big thing is the amount of shots he's taken, and this is how the first goal comes back to. It's like the game against Swindon we spoke about as well. Is that last season he didn't pull the trigger enough for me. He'd take an extra touch or he looked to play someone in, but now he's just sort of getting the ball and quickly taking his shot. Keeper can't set himself, and if Didzy takes his shot quickly and fires the top corner like he is doing, there's no keeper in the league, in the country, who's going to save them. I mean, what a goal it is. Right in the top corner, yet again. And I think he took 7 or 8 shots in this game. He just seemed to be constantly shooting, and that's what I love to see. He's just always willing to get in those positions now where he's going to shoot, and I think that's a little bit different to last season. So, yeah, I mean, last week at Swindon, we said, he's not going to put one in the top corner every week, but if he carries on doing this, he might, because of what a goal it was.
Exactly, man. Exactly. And you make a few interesting points there. My first one that I want to pick up on was obviously you mentioned he's took 7, 8 shots in the game, and to do that, you have to be, at the top of your game. So I guess my question is he back at the top of his game? And not only that, is he starting to look again like a cut above the level at 36 years old? Because last season, as you mentioned, he was playing slightly deeper behind Langstaff, and that's another point I wanted to pick up on, but I'll do it after I've asked you this one. But, you can safely say that wasn't McGoldrick at his best, but 4 goals in 2 games, 4, very decent goals indeed in 2 games, and he's starting to look all of a sudden like he's back to his best. So how would you take that?
Yeah, I think he is. I think he is back to his best, and I think it's going to become a really difficult question of do you, and it comes on to the point about Maka, do you put Jatta straight back in? Because obviously both of us have been really high on Jatta. We think he's really, really good forward, and I think he'll score loads of goals for Notts County. It's just, do you drop a forward who's in unreal form? And then, you could say, let's get them both in the team. But we saw last season that McGoldrick wasn't at his best when crammed into a team. So sometimes you can't, even though you can get everyone in the starting 11, sometimes it's not the best idea. You need that balance. And I think that's what we've got a little bit more this season. So yeah, to answer your question, I think he is back to his best. I think we need to be careful not to get carried away and to overplay him. But I think we're seeing that. We took him off quite early, still with 20 minutes-ish. We've had a time left to play. really good management of him. We're not looking to run him into the ground. And if you can get him on for 70 minutes, 65, 70 minutes, and he can produce those moments of magic, those moments of quality. And similarly, he's a brilliant option if we go with Jata to bring him off the bench. I mean, it's fantastic to have those options and that depth. But yeah, I think he is back to his best. I mean, the goals that he's scoring, it's not like he just scored one. He scored 4, like you say, really good goals. 3, I know one might take a slight deflection, etc. But 3 right out the top draw, and that's not luck or coincidence. You know, he's in a really good vein of form, and long may it continue.
100%, man, 100%. And the second point I wanted to pick up on was obviously, again, you mentioned last season, playing behind Langstaff. If Jatta comes back into the team and Didzy doesn't get dropped, you could imagine maybe that's going to be the same case again. So I guess, I don't want to say do you think it's fair, but do you think it'd be valid to move Didzy, further behind into like the 10 role behind Jatta, if that was the way that we was going to do it? Or do you reckon it's a case of, Jatta's now missed a few games, Didzy's in fine form, it's time for Jatta to work his way back into the team? It's an interesting debate, and I'd love to get your thoughts.
Yeah, and I can see both sides of the argument, because you can put a really strong team out with Didzy behind him. And obviously, I'm sure we're going to talk about Dan Crowley and Jody Jones, obviously, who didn't play. But if you've got Dan Crowley and Didzy in the form that he's in behind Jatta, I mean, what a front three that is. But I think part of the reason for the form is because he played in a more advanced role. He's the main man in the team. The team's built round him almost, and he had that at Derby. He was the focal point, the main man. Last season at Notts, he was never going to be that, because you've got Langstaff, who scored 42 goals. You're not going to become the main man, even though you've got all the pedigree and all the ability in the world. He was never going to. The team was built around Langstaff, and now the team has been built around Jatta a little bit. Obviously, other players. When I mean built around it, I mean they're the focal point at the top of the pitch, right? And McGoldrick's gone to be in that. Now, of course, most of his shots have been from outside the box, and players getting beyond him, because he does drop back. He does come deep to get the ball, and that's the freedom he has in that role. A little bit more so than if he's in attacking midfield role, in a weird way, because he's already in that position. Whereas when he's a centre forward, he can drop back into that position. And maybe the people marking him as a centre back, he can't go that far, and he gets in those pockets of space. And I think that's the big thing. So for me, I would go your second one. I think that Jatta's got to work his way back in. And I think he will. And I think that Didzy, he's 36. He's 37 this season, I think. So, you're looking at a player who probably can't play 46 games. So Jatta's going to have his chance. He'll get his chance back in the team. And that's great. That's what we want, competition for places and positions. You want a player knowing, like we had this debate last season, at right wing back, for example, where we had Aaron Lemaine. If he went for a rough patch, there's no one really pushing him behind. He's got to worry. Whereas McGoldrick knows if he doesn't, he has the next 3 games and doesn't score, well, he's out. Jatta's going to come in, and vice versa. So I think that's a brilliant competition to have, especially in attacking areas.
100% agree. Again, especially with your points about last season as well. I mean, we came on this so many times and we're saying, it's such a struggling, but realistically, there's no chance that I'm going to play the next game because we had no options. But I guess now we do. And just finally on Didzy, actually, I 100% agree with you when you say he's much better playing up front. But interestingly, the fact is that the 4 goals he has scored in the past 2 games have come pretty much all of them have been outside of the box, which I see is more of a natural number 10 position. So I know I agree with you, and obviously you said that he's better as the forward, but all 4 goals came from like a number 10 position, as I said. So I don't know. Would it be the end of the world to play him in behind Jatta? Who knows, mate? But I mean, like I said, 4 goals from all outside the box. That's more of a natural, attacking midfielder role rather than a number 9. So who knows? But I mean, we've got so many options now. I mean, we'll talk more individually about performances, and obviously like you mentioned, Jones and Crowley admission for injury. But let's talk about the second goal quickly. Again, the deflection, as you've touched on, still a very important time to get the goal, because 1-0 in any game is a dangerous scoreline. 2-0 obviously is notoriously known to be a dangerous scoreline as well. But at that point, you felt like not so very comfortable. Accrington never really threatened to really ever look like scoring. If I'm going to be brutally honest, but yeah, 2-0 Didzy again with the killer strike. Curtis Edwards' assist as well, which obviously I want to get in there because he's someone as well who's obviously we came on and spoke about his game in Shrewsbury, which wasn't the great, but ever since he's just seems to look up. But yeah, just your overall thoughts on that passage of play that led to the game, being killed.
Yeah, I mean Curtis Edwards, huge fan of, and I think that's probably why we were so disappointed with his performance against Shrewsbury, because we had such promise from watching him at Woking and all the reviews from the Woking fans as well, and that's probably why we're disappointed. But since then, he's been really, really good, like really, really, really good. And I think he does the things that you maybe don't notice as much as well. Well, obviously they're becoming noticed, but side of the game that isn't the glitzy and glamour side. He works hard. He's always in really good positions. He's really intelligent footballer. I think that's what you can really tell about him. And actually, he's a better athlete than people will probably give him credit for. If you just looked at him, and you shouldn't judge a book by its cover, but he's quite a rangy, tall, not a massive frame type player, but he works really hard. He's strong. He's got a great engine. So I think he's a better athlete than people perhaps might judge him on just on first appearances. For the goal itself, obviously again another strike from range, and I think it's another point I wanted to range. Well, briefly, I mean, Jacob Bedeau got the assist for the first one. I mean, he was up the pitch in quite an attacking area for that one. But the actual goals, I thought that their goalkeeper, Kelly, for Accrington, did actually have quite a good game. Obviously, he's been beaten by a stunner for the first one and a deflection for the second one. But I think what it highlighted was Alex Bass as well, who's obviously kept another clean sheet, and I'm sure you're going to come on to him. But one thing I wanted to ask you about as well and get your opinion on is Alex Bass has had a really strong start, and obviously a lot of that's the confidence of him being the goalkeeper. But I think another thing that's really been clear to me is the quality of the shots he's faced haven't been as high, and that's a good thing, as in like our defence are limiting the shots he faces, so a lot of them are straight at him. So he's making a lot of more comfortable saves. Obviously, part of that's due to him, his positioning, his confidence coming for crosses, etc. But also, I think the defence, I mean, Bedeau, we mentioned, got the assist, but all of them, the shots that teams are getting off against us aren't from great positions. So, therefore, the saves are easier to make, if that makes sense.
100%, I agree. But I feel like that comes as a reward for, a defence having so much confidence in what's behind them. I personally think that currently and probably throughout the whole season, Alex Bass will be the best, if not one of the best in the division. At the minute, I'd probably say he's the best. We are the only team left in this division who's unbeaten after 5 games. Tranmere are still unbeaten, but that's after 4 games. And like I've said, it's not by fluke at all. And you look at the games that we've won. And the Grimsby, the 4-1, which could have been 4-0, it was a soft goal to concede. But you can't really complain because this defence has been faultless so far. You look at the Tranmere, the opening day at Tranmere, that last season, that's easily a defeat. But again, you have people like Alex Bass who's willing to come out off his line. And I know it sounds cliche, but it's something that we haven't been used to. We haven't been used to commanding goalkeeper at this football club for a long time until this season. Now, I agree with your point where, the quality of shots that we are facing, haven't been, the greatest yet. I mean, even in some games, there has been some good quality shots, which he has smothered. I refer back to the Swindon game, especially, which he's just smothered with ease, and that just shows his quality. But again, I feel like it's a whole picture when you talk about something like this. I feel like it's coming down to the fact that there's so much confidence in this back line at the minute and what's behind him, and it breeds with Alex Bass. It all stems with Alex Bass because I've no doubts if you put Slocum or Stone in goal next game, you'd see a lot more irrational back line, whereas Jacob Bedeau can afford to go 35 yards forward to assist Didzy for his goal, knowing that his colleagues, if you like, in defence and his goalkeeper is going to be sound without him there for that passage of play. So that's what I think we're in such a good place with the
Definitely.
back line.
Just on that goalkeeper, sorry to interrupt you, but in terms of for me, he's the most important upgrade we've had this season. And I know it's a whole collective. Don't get me wrong. But for me, he's the most important one. Do you think last season, if he'd have been in goal for us, do you think we would have made the playoffs? That's a big question. But do you think that dip off maybe had we had him for 46 games, like he played for Wimbledon, and he'd been a Notts County goalkeeper instead for 46 games? Do you think that could have made a massive difference?
Probably, I won't even say probably not. I would just say no, to be honest, because I feel like the quality of the back line last season in comparison to what you have now, like if you take it from perspectives, right? So our left centre half this year is Jacob Bello. He's so far, and this is no disrespect to Carl Cameron. I've a lot of respect for Carl Cameron, but he so far has been miles better than what Carl Cameron was in that position. And then you look at you Matty Platt in the centre. Last season that was Aidan Baldwin. Matty Platt in 5 games so far he hasn't made. He's rarely put a foot wrong. He's been beaten for pace a few times, but he's rarely put a foot wrong. I have no doubts if you put Aidan Baldwin back in his back line for 5 games, he'd have made at least 2 nosebleed mistakes. And then obviously there is a common denominator in both back lines, and that's Lewis McCarry, and he rightfully has kept his place because even last season he looked like the brightest spot in that back line, and even this season he's been fantastic as well. But I don't think I'm actually glad that Alex Bass wasn't the Notts County player last season, because if he was, he'd probably be looking at a similar situation to Aidan Stone, where he's just been frozen out, been blamed or whatever it has been. And he's just sat there being third choice. I have no doubts we probably would have had another number 1 this season. But I don't know. Let me throw that question back to you. Do you think it would have made much of a difference?
Yeah, I think you've made a great point there in terms of I'm glad he wasn't, because he'd probably be frozen out. And I think you're right, it's a collective thing. I think you can make an argument that the confidence comes with a goalkeeper, and then that it's a two-way street, isn't it? And likewise, like I said about the shots he's faced, he's been brilliant, but also the defence has limited the shots. I think one thing it's important to note about Lewis McCarry is you're right, he's the common denominator. Deserves massive credit. But I also think that he wasn't even the starter at the start of last season. Like, he was quite a late arrival, didn't get in the team straight away. And when he did get in the team, then he signed permanently, and then he was out the team again. And I think that the fact that, again, we're looking at a centre-back who hopefully can play 46 games or 38, 39, 40 games, compared to last season where he had a bit of an in and out, because we had Brindley, Baldwin, Cameron as and Rawlinson as the 4 to start last season, really. None of them are at the club now. Well, obviously Cameron's out on loan, but the other 3 aren't at the club. So I think we've had a massive upgrade and improvement in that area. And that's not even mentioning the depth that we've got. I mean, we haven't even seen, really, the other 3 or 4 centre-backs that we've got at the club. Obviously, McDonald we haven't seen at all. Cundy we've seen a little bit of. Lucas Ness we haven't seen at all either. So, you've got another 3 centre-backs there to still come in and not to be disrespectful to them, but I almost hope they don't force their way in, because it means that the back 3 is done the job, and it's a very early days to say it, but I can't see any of them forcing their way in at the moment anyway. Obviously, things happen, injuries, suspensions, form can turn. But the way this back 3 has started with the goalkeeper, it's an unbelievable unit. And it just gives us so much confidence going into any game. And it's another clean sheet. I think we're going to absolutely smash the amount of clean sheets we kept last season.
I 100% agree. Again, and I think it's quite funny actually, because as you start speaking about the options, it was actually going through my mind to ask you. Obviously, we'll talk, as I mentioned, about individual performances through the Accrington game. Obviously, this is a podcast, and when you get into topics, it's kind of hard not to speak about them. But obviously, you mentioned Lewis McCarry there, and it brings me on to that conversation really, because McDonald's now back on the grass. He's as far as I'm aware, he's back in training. Obviously, you still have Cundy, who's on the bench unused. You have Ness as well. But for me, one of my hot takes of the season so far is that we have Lewis McCarry on a contract till 2026. The only way I see him not fulfilling that contract is if he gets a big, if we get offered a substantial offer for him, which I don't think is too far away, especially with how he started the season and, his background, his pedigree, Stoke City Academy. He's come here, obviously, probably, it may have been deemed as maybe a little step back in terms of, the level of academy he was at to where he is now. But now, he's probably one of the first names you put on the team sheet. Him, Platt, and Bedu probably are. But for the sake of Macari, like I've said this to my friends, the only way I see is losing Macari is that if we get offered a substantial offer, which is again something that I generally don't see being unrealistic nor too far away if he continues the season. But I mean that's another topic for another day. But for me, I don't think you can't drop any of the three at the minute. It's simply impossible. I feel like if you drop any of them, it's gonna change sort of the dynamic. All three of them seem to have like a very good understanding of each other already. If you drop one of them, maybe you change that. But then what that is, obviously it leads to a headache for Stuart Maynard, but we've alluded to it so many times on this podcast. Like in comparison to the headaches he had last season, this is a very good one to have. But then you have three quality players in, Rob Cundy, Rod McDonald, Lucas Ness. These three players all want to play football. How do you manage this all? And I'm asking, I don't know how to answer that question. That's why I'm asking it you, because I genuinely don't know. It's great to have so many options, great to have so many capable options, but if you're only starting 3 per weekend, that means you've got to have 3 miss out, and realistically, only 2 of them are going to really make the match day squad because you're not going to have 3 centre halves on the bench. This ain't last season anymore. So, again, I'm just going to let you give me your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think it comes back to the Lucas Ness sign in a way where he was a sign we didn't need, if we're going to be honest, but he was, like they said at the time, he was one that they felt they couldn't pass up the opportunity to sign him because it was like, obviously the fee must have been a good deal and he's available and the type of player you can't pass up on, which is brilliant to hear. That not only are we always tracking players, but also that the budget this season, and maybe Langstaff going is freed up budget, I don't know, but we've got the budget where we can take not a risk. I don't think it's a risky signing, but we can stretch the budget to take on luxury players, almost like players we didn't really need, but we're planning for the future. And I think part of that plan might be planning for losing Lewis McCarry. And I don't want to, you've alluded to it there. I don't want to put it into the universe and that it happen. I don't want it to happen. But like you mentioned, his pedigree, he speaks to anyone that he worked with, played with, worked under at Stoke, and they'll only have positive things to say about him. That's his character. And I think he's one of those players that if things had happened differently for him, he'd be playing higher up. And I don't see any reason why he won't end up playing higher up. He's got that drive. You can tell he plays as well in a way that you can kind of match up to his attitude, the way he comes across. Very measured, very composed, very solid, and that's how he plays and how he acts as well. And I think he's adding elements and layers to his game. We've seen him get forward more. Seeing obviously he was a right back as a youth player, and we've seen that more and more in that right centre back role. The fact he's got that versatility, he's got age on his side. I think all those factors do make him a very, very attractive asset, and I think that's what I really like about some of the business we've done. Him, Lucas, obviously last season, Lucas Ness this season, young Jack Inchy, younger saleable assets who. I'm not saying I want us to sell them, obviously not. I never want us to sell players, but the model that we're trying to go for is obviously to do that. And it also allows you to bring them through and develop them longer term so that I know none of them are like-for-like replacement for Dan Crowley, but say we'd lost Dan Crowley on deadline day or whenever in the window, we'd have players coming through that are, again, ready to step up. And like I say, I know we haven't got a player potentially in that position, but we've got loads of centre-mid options now. We've got loads of centre-back options now. And even though we've got 3 centre-backs, weirdly, centre-mid feels like an easier role and position to rotate for us than centre-back does. Because like you say, I think that you can't upset the balance of that back three at the minute. He's settled and you don't want to do that. So it's very hard to manage it, I'll be honest. We've almost been fortunate that 2 of them have been injured. Again, that sounds bizarre, but if all 3 had been fully fit, knocking on Stu's door going, I want to play, I came here to play, gives you a much bigger headache. So the fact that the 3 have established themselves over 5 games probably means that you can turn around to your other options and say, look, they're playing really well. If they have a drop in form or an injury or a suspension, you'll be in, and they're going to have to be patient. But like you said, it's a great headache to have compared to last season, where sometimes we couldn't even name a full bench or even think about having squad depth. So it's a much better position to be in this year.
It's interesting you mentioned about it's easier for us to rotate centre midfield than the back line at the minute, which I 100% agree with, by the way. I feel like, and I understand your point as well with how we're fortunate that 2 have been injured. Again, it's, you never want your players to be injured, but it has certainly helped in a way, because you to keep all 3 players happy outside the team who aren't playing in the back line on a match day, it will take some doing. So at least now, he's only had to really deal with 1 so far, but when all 3 come back into match contention, that's where it might get a little bit difficult. But that's a future problem, which I'm sure we'll address when it does happen. But centre midfield wise, I mean, you have to talk about George Abbott really after Saturday. I feel like I tweeted this last night, and I said that wasn't just a fantastic debut. That wasn't a fluke. That he's not just going to play like that once, then never reach the height again. That's a player who he's going to play like that every single week he steps on a football pitch, especially whilst he's in League Two. And I genuinely don't think Tottenham realised like his quality, because his level of quality, so already at his age, is miles clear of League Two. And if he plays like that every single week, I hope there's no recall option in his loan, but I'm pretty sure there will be, especially with the club, the size of the club he's came from. But, we're not putting any of that into the universe, like you say. We're just talking about, the past weekend and what a performance it was. And again, Didzy stole all the headlines, and rightfully so. But, George Abbott weren't that far behind. And as you can tell by the content the club are putting out about him, especially last night, pretty much a match cam just on George Abbott. So it was almost like they knew what was coming, because, again, you can never ever predict he's going to play like that. But they had everything set up to film him, so obviously they knew what was coming. But yeah, I mean, what a performance, what a Madeleine debut. That's probably one of the best. That is the best Madeleine debut I feel like I've seen since Maka against Maidenhead on the opening day of the National League season. And it'll probably be a long time until someone comes in and has a performance on his first day playing at Madeleine than George Abbott. But again, less of me talking. Let me get you involved here now. And just simply, mate, what are your thoughts? Because what a performance, what a player.
Yeah, well, precisely that. What a performance, what a player. And I think you make a great point about the debut. I don't know if this is one that's come from the club or the management team, but I know for a fact that Maynard and his assistants and coaches will have been aware of him, because while at Wealdstone, that's what they thrived on, was loans from Premier League 2. So the amount of games that they've watched of youth teams, I don't think there's many people in the country who've seen more games of the youth league, especially London-based teams. I mean, they will have seen Spurs under 21s, under 18s, whatever, play dozens of times, and so he'll be a player they're well aware of, and they'll know his qualities. And I don't think it's any surprise that he's gone straight into the team. Obviously, what a player he is. And I know that already the comparisons are being made to Grealish and McGregor, and obviously it's very early to say that off of one full 90. But he does have that air of a player that you do think we'll look back on in a few years and go, yeah, he played for Notts. Don't forget we were a big part of his development. And my only concern will be recall in January. You just got to hope that they think he's developing at the right place, because let's be honest, if he carries on playing like that, come January time, League One teams are going to be looking at him thinking we need a centre mid who can bring all the elements he can, and there's not that many about. Hence why I think we brought him in, because I think what's crucial about him is he brings a different element to what we've got. And even though I think we've got 7-8 centre mids or 7-8 players that can play centre mid, none of them can do the role that he does as well as him. I mean, that's why, even though it felt like a bit of a, again, about the budget, we don't need another centre mid, but we wanted another player with a different type of profile, and we have the budget to stretch to it. And I don't know how much wages, obviously, we're paying. Obviously, it's a loan, so that always helps. But my only concern would be, come January, and again, it's very early to be talking about this, but come January, he gets recalled. But other than that, I don't see any reason why this guy isn't in this Notts County first 11. And again, we mentioned the amount of options there, but when you get players nailed on in a team, I'm not saying he's nailed on completely because it's one game, but when you say he continues that, say he puts that performance together for 2-3 more games, it's going to be very hard to then say he's not a nailed on starter in the first 11. So then you're then down to probably one other centre midfield spot to go alongside him, which is crazy to say about such a young player, but that was the quality of his performance. And you're right, the fact that the media team kind of already knew that he was going to play that way, to me suggests this guy is probably tearing up trees in training as well, because they're going to get wind of the fact that, have you seen this lad? Like, he's the real deal. And it's also not a surprise given the team he's come from. He's not like, again, this is no disrespect to Lewis McCarry, but he came in on loan from Stoke, where if we'd got a centre midfielder from Stoke and he's playing that well, you're thinking, why is he not in the Stoke 11? But he's come from Spurs, who are like one of the big six, aren't they? So it's not probably a surprise that he's not in their first 11 at the minute, because of the quality. They've probably got international players who cost millions and millions. So, yeah, I mean, the guy, he's got so much talent, and really looking forward to seeing him develop in this team. And again, he's another player that can play centre-back, so we've got another option there, but I don't really want to see him in any other position than where he played at the weekend.
Agreed. 100% agreed again. What do you think it says at the minute how Notts are viewed by teams higher up in the pyramid? Because, again, this is a footballer who's just had a very good debut, but like we've said, alluded to many times already, it's not by fluke. He's clearly a very good footballer, and to have a player of that quality come into your team on loan, to be borrowed by one of the bigger clubs in the Premier League, it says a lot about how you're viewed, and you're naive to think and sit and suggest that Notts were the only offer for someone like George Abbott, because I can highly doubt it was. I can imagine he had plenty, but obviously it's not that secured the deal. And what do you think that shows? Because I can imagine, well, I mean, this is all assumptions, but I can imagine there was deals in place to go to better standards of leagues. But I think it's more of a stylistic fit with George Abbott coming here, and it does look as though it is going to be a very good, it's going to look like the shoe fits perfectly here with George Abbott. But it obviously comes from a good reputation. The club's being viewed as a good footballing side now, and teams like Spurs are willing to borrow some of the very good academy players. And not only that as well, I feel like the push of George Abbott content, the fist pumps that Swindon, obviously that was all through Didzy, but again it created a moment, and obviously the player cam as well, the selfie in front of the cop after the game. I feel like Notts doing a very good job of pushing George Abbott content out, as if to say to all the other big academies and Spurs again, and anyone else who may not consider borrowing Notts, there's a way of saying, look, this is how we treat your players when they come in. This is how our fan base takes your players when they come in, because if clubs are seeing that, they're going to send their players to Notts County, and it certainly is up in the right way to take more and more good academy players on loan. But let's talk about George Abbott again. A stylistic fit, as I've said. Someone who Notts, last season probably wouldn't have got a sniff at in terms of how things are going on the pitch. But this season, the belief that's back in the place, obviously the start probably helped that as well. Obviously, he was late. He was not January, so he was late summer. So obviously, we played a few games at that point as well, and it gave Spurs the opportunity to see how Abbott would fit in. But what does it say overall about how Notts are now viewed by the rest of the pyramid, especially those higher up, where they can send these players into Notts County, knowing that they're going to have a very successful loan, which I have no doubts that George Abbott will.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head and made some excellent points there. And just to expand on that, Spurs would have. I mean, this is with a lot of players, not just George Abbott, but like they could probably have the pick of the clubs to who they want to send a player to. You know, these top Premier League teams, they can choose who they want their players to go to, and you often see it. Clubs have a couple of players from the same club because that team see something in that the team they're loaning the player to or the players to, and think, yeah, we'll send a couple of lads there. And I think it comes back to style is the main point. And I think it is a big reason why I understand the frustration, especially from the crowd sometimes when they don't get the style. You know, why are we playing it round? Why are we playing this at this level? Why are we trying? You know, we're not. This isn't Pep. Why are we trying to play like that in League Two? It's not the way to play. This is exactly the reason why. Because teams in the Premier League aren't, you know, no disrespect to the teams that play League Two, pump it in the channel, get it to a forward man. They're not going to look at those clubs and think that's worthwhile for their players' development. That's not going to translate to how they want their top players to come back to them. The ones that have got an eye on for the future, who they think potentially could force their way into the team, they want them to get used to playing a style out on loan that is somewhat similar to their own style. And whilst the standard is not going to be anywhere near the Premier League standard, at least if they send it to a team that plays in a certain way, the style at least can match up a little bit and marry up. And I also think it brings on to another point, which is we need to do this more often. Like you said, you made a great point. Spurs, we're doing all the content and it makes a clear message to Spurs. If the George Abbott loan goes well and he goes back to Spurs and he starts getting involved in their first team, next summer we go, right, okay, we did that last season, George Abbott, who else have you got to give us now? Because you've seen we can develop your players. Let's do it. Our loans over the last couple of seasons haven't been great, if we're going to be honest. We've had Premier League clubs loan us players. Brad Young, Ollie Tipton, that spring to the mind. Obviously, Lewis McCarr is a bit different because he came in on a free halfway through that loan. But we didn't really use Ollie Tipton or Brad Young. And so I don't know, but I'd imagine Leicester and Wolves are probably a bit more reluctant to send us players back on loan again, just because we haven't really used their players. So I think it's something we need to do more often is take advantage of our style, get these good loan players in on loan. We're getting players that, I mean, if George Abbott was a 26-year-old, imagine the wages he cost at League Two level for his ability. But probably getting a snip of that because he's on loan from, you know, we're probably not paying his full wage, or if we are, he's not going to be on astronomical wages at his age anyway. So I think it's a really good point. It's definitely an avenue we need to go down more. It's definitely to do with the style. And I think it's something we will do more and more of as we go through, hopefully go through the leagues. I think it will get even easier when you get to League One, because I think League Two, the level is a little bit below probably where teams want to send their players. I think League One's where you see a lot more high quality loanees in that division. So that's probably where we'll start to see it a bit more. But yeah, 100% it's to do with the style. And I think you're right. I mean, I don't know, but I'd imagine there were other clubs in for George Abbott, but they've seen Notts County and gone, we know how they play. We know it's a good fit. Let's send him there. And I think it's definitely something we have to take advantage of more so as we move forwards.
Agreed again. I can't say I disagree. Just finally though, obviously again, I feel like we've done a good job of nailing through pretty much every aspect that needed covering, other than one thing. And I feel like that's what we have to do now. I feel like we have to talk about Stu himself, because, you know, from where we look like we were headed, you know, in March, April time, especially the MK Dons game when the banners came out. And it looked like from that point, I always think when people start protesting against you, you know, you're having your hands forced there to have a dismissal. Weren't the case with the brothers. They saw Stu as their man and they backed him. They said that very clearly in their statement at the end of the season. And even more so now, it looks like a massive payoff, because again, it's only 5 games and nothing's won after 5 games, or then, you know, a few games, if you like. But no trophies or anything are won after 5 games. But what it does put a massive target on your back as Notts County now, because you are the team in the league that everyone wants to beat. You're one of two teams unbeaten still. No one wants you to be unbeaten in this league. No one wants you to have that luxury of being unbeaten. Someone wants to put that one above, under the L on the league table. But again, I think it's been remarkable, really. He had a massive summer. Stuart Maynard, the first time, really, that it looked like he was making big changes. When he changed the captaincy from Carl Cameron, and everyone was a bit like, I didn't expect that, but it was justified maybe. And then he started clearing out the backroom staff that were here under Luke Williams. You Tom Wheel, who no one really wanted to leave, but he's departed now, and there's many more names that you could think of, and he cleared all them out and brought his own staff in, and people were a bit reluctant to agree with some of the decisions he made, simply because they weren't sold on him. But I feel like, obviously, unbeaten on the pitch, yes, brilliant, 100%. But obviously, having your own backroom staff around you as well has obviously just released a whole new sense of life at Notts County for Stuart Maynard as well. And he hasn't been for the August Manager of the Month, which is disappointing, because I feel like he was justified. But I mean, I'm sure Stu would rather just be unbeaten than have that accolade anyway. But yeah, let's just quickly wrap up with on the accent part, talking about Stuart Maynard made it 5 games unbeaten. His team's flying on the pitch. We don't really look like slowing down anytime soon either. In fact, you could probably argue for the opposite. It looks like we're just going to keep levelling up. But yeah, just quickly, how remarkable has it been to see the start of the season, especially where it looked like when we was headed into, we were heading into the ground a little bit with Stuart Maynard. He's really turned it around so far. So yeah, just your thoughts on that, mate.
Yeah, I think everyone knows how big of a fan I am of Stu, and obviously he was, and when he was appointed and wanted as everyone seems to do really well at this football club, of course they do. And it's one of these where I'm not going to sit here and say I was right, because it's way too early to be saying that, because it's, like you say, it's 5 games. But what I will say is they are a process-driven management team, and it's all about, it's very cliche, but trust in that process. And it's always about, it comes back to that performance over results argument and all those things. It's following a process, and eventually things will click into place. And I think whilst 5 games into the season is too early to say that's working, I also think last season was too fewer games to judge Stuart Maynard on, especially when he came in at such a difficult time, such a difficult run of games, came in after such a great manager who departed. We had performances, slumping, didn't have an amazing January, if we look back on it. Made some good signings, made some not so great signings in that time as well. And I think that's a big part of his success at Wealdstone. And you have to call it success, and a lot of people, I don't want to say he mocked it, but almost kind of looked at it and said he didn't win anything, but the achievement was a club that shouldn't have been at that level. He had them punched above their weight. So it is success in my eyes. And the success he had there was a whole collective process, and a big part of that's recruitment. And I've got no doubt he's been more involved in recruitment perhaps than previous managers have. I think you can tell just by the profile of some of the signings, like I mentioned with your Abbotts and your Lucas Nesses. So I'm no doubt these are players he would have been tracking from his time as Wealdstone manager. I think that's a whole big part of his process. It's a whole collective thing. I will caveat it with his 5 games, and also that if you look at the teams we've played in the 5 games, I think maybe Tranmere, maybe Fleetwood could be up there come the end of the season. I'm not sure the other 3 teams we played will be, I'm going to be honest. And we also had that kind of false sense of security last season. We also had a record-breaking start last year, and look how that went, and we played some of the easier teams. I think we'll learn a lot more about Stuart Maynard's Notts County. Probably have to play Bromley, to be fair, which is obviously, I know we played them, they're not a League 2 proven team either, but we know how tough that place that is to go. Gillingham as well soon. So we're playing a couple more. Port Vale's not too far away, so a couple more of the teams that you probably were more fancied come the end of the season. But you have to say it's a brilliant start, unbeaten. You can't ask for much more than that. And signs are much more positive, and I hope that he can build credit in the bank, because I've got no doubt we'll have tough periods this season. Like other than the National League promotion season, every season has a tough patch where you have a run of 3 or 4 or 5 games where it doesn't go your way, and I hope that he can build enough credit in the bank for things, not to turn on him quickly, like it did last season. So yeah, but I think he's brilliant. I really do. I think that, and I think that I really hope that this start is a platform for him to build on.
I mean, from a personal angle, I was never really too sold on him last season, because again, the only thing I really care about on a weekend is not county winning football matches. When they don't, it kind of sets the tone for my whole week, which is why I'm enjoying this unbeaten start, because I've not had a miserable week yet this season. But I'm sure, like you say, every team does have that patch, and I'm sure that's coming. But I can embrace that. We've felt that pain many a times before. But I've spoken to Stu on many occasions now, and every single time I've come away from it thinking like, what he's intensified and increased my respect for him. I just think he's so. I remember the fans forum. I said to him at the end of that. I said, like, when things weren't going too well, I literally just said to him, look, you didn't get this job drawn out of a raffle. You got this job based on merit of being a good football coach, and I just feel like now he's starting to show that. Again, like you mentioned, take away your Tranmere and Fleetwood, we've not had the most difficult starts. But I feel like some of the performances that we've put in, teams, even the better teams in this division, some of the better teams that we have coming up, they'll struggle to live with that, especially at Meadow Lane as well. It'll be interesting, and of course, that's a future discussion. Just before we get on to Bromley, I know we said we'd wrap up on the Accrington stuff, but again, we forgot we touched on it, but we forgot to discuss it. The Jody and the Crowley admissions for injury. There was a massive alarm bells ringing at the start of the game at that point, because you thought, where's our creativity going to come from? I certainly thought Nick Schroeder stepped up massively. I thought he was brilliant at the weekend, especially down that left hand side, and even the right hand side for some parts of the game as well. I thought Sam Austin as well. Probably not his best game, but it just shows how important he still is as well. With coming in like that, playing 90 minutes after he hasn't really played too much football in the past few weeks. And Stuart Maynard didn't get nominated for the August Manager of the Month, but Jody Jones has been nominated for the August Player of the Month, which is obviously, again, a month that I believe it was 3 goals and 2 assists. And again, I mean, Jody could probably sit out for 3 or 4 games, and he'd come back and he'd still find a way to be back at the top of the assist charts by the next 2 games. He'll probably just do something ridiculous like he did against Grimsby last season and get 4 in a game, and immediately the league's back looking at him. But yeah, just your thoughts very quickly on how we coped very well with the admission. And obviously, again, it does show that not so that Jody and Dan Crowley can still put in a very good team performance, look controlling, look dominant, and still win the game. But also, again, as well, the fact that Jody Jones is more than likely going to sweep the August Player of the Month as well.
Yeah, I hope he does. Obviously, I hope he does it, and if he deserves. And I also think that what's probably frightening in a good way for us and not for other people is the fact that I don't think Jody Jones has really got out of first gear, to be honest. I think the levels he can show, he's not even shown that yet this season. So I think the fact that he's up for August Player of the Month, whilst probably being at 60% of his best, just goes to show what a player he is. I don't mean that in a negative way, 60% of his best. I mean, he's still playing well, but I just think he can just be even better. But yeah, I'll be honest. Before the game kicked off, I saw the lineup and I said it. You can probably find my comment on there. This looks like an ordinary team, and understandably so when you've got three of your best players, Jatta, Crowley, Jones, all out. Your 3-star attackers, if you like. You're looking at it going, it looks like an ordinary team. Did forget that we've got Didzy in the team. No team's ordinary when you've got him in the form that he's in. But it was a real test of squad depth. And yeah, I think we're fortunate that we came up against Accrington. Again, all due respect to them, I don't think they're going to be anywhere near good enough this season. But it showed we've got squad depth. And that's what's going to be different this season. It's going to be a squad game. And if we do want to get promoted, which we do, we have to have a strong squad. And the weekend showed that. In seasons gone by, last season, for example, if we'd had our 3 best players out, I can't imagine us putting out a team that could really cope in this league. Whereas that team we put out the weekend, yes, it didn't have the star-studded names, but it was still a very solid League 2 team. So, yeah, I think it's a real positive. I just hope that they're back soon because obviously we look like an even better team with them in there. But if anything as well, just to bring the previous point back on about Stu, it makes it start look even better because we've beaten the team having all our star players out. So he's getting the best out of the whole squad and he's managing the squad really well as well. So I think a lot of credit has to go to everyone at the football club for that one.
100%. 100%. And you mentioned there, obviously, hopefully they're back soon. Hopefully soon is Saturday. Saturday is Bromley away. Notoriously, known to be somewhere in the past, especially in our National League years, where Notts have struggled. I mean, I can't ever remember. Man, as far as I'm aware, we didn't win there once in the National League. I think I've been every single time, and we haven't won in a single one. So hopefully that changes this weekend. I feel like Bromley, a team that they're going to be physical. They're going to set up hard to beat, especially at home. But I don't think it's a team that Notts should be worried about going away and facing, especially in the form that they're in. But I would say that about anyone. If he's playing anyone this weekend, no matter if it was someone like MK Dons, you're Gillingham, you Port Vale, when you're unbeaten in this league, you want that run to continue. And no matter what you put in front of you, that's what you have to beat. And I don't think Bromley are the most feared team in this league. Yes, they're going to set up well against us, and we already know what to expect right now before even discussing it. But yeah, how are you feeling going into that fixture? Because again, as I literally just mentioned, we know what to expect from Bromley, but I don't think it's a team that Notts are worried about going away and facing this season.
Yeah, I mean, this may come back to haunt me, but I've been slightly disappointed with Bromley and their start based on the fact their first couple of games. I think they were looking like the team, like everyone's underestimated them because they come from the National League, and we know how good they are as a team that have come up against them, like you mentioned. So it wasn't a surprise to us, but probably to a lot of people that haven't been in the National League, you think, oh, Bromley, started really well. Since then, they've not been as ruthless as that, and that's something you associate with Bromley, being that ruthless, physical, hard-to-beat side, and not had a bad start by any stretch of the imagination, but after the first couple of games, you thought, they could be right up there. They're back in mid-table. They would have took that themselves, of course, after 5 games being a newly promoted team, but, I think that I've been slightly disappointed with them. I think the other 2 points I want to touch on with them, like you mentioned, going there has never been good for us, really. Not won there. The fixture itself is extremely low scoring. So having a look at it, I think the highest scoring game between us is 2-2 in terms of league games, which obviously is not high scoring. That's happened once. Most of them are 1-1 or 1-0. So I think you can expect a game of fine margins for sure. That's always the way it is against Bromley, and I think we can expect to probably have 75%, 80% possession. They don't like having the ball. We do, so we'll dominate possession. It's not going to be a question of that. What I think is a huge advantage for us this season is the pitch at Bromley is no longer the Astro, because you're not allowed to have it in, or I say Astro, you know what I mean? I think it's 3G, whatever, 4G technical term, but not real grass. You have to have it as a genuine surface, I believe, because of the regulations. So I think they've had their pitch changed. So there's that'll give us an advantage over them, because every time we've gone there, I think it's been a struggle adapting to that surface. We've not really done well on those types of pitches before, so that's a positive. Like you say, I don't think we should go into fearing them. They're pretty much the same Bromley team that were in the National League. They haven't really added loads of players, so it's pretty much the same team. We know what we're going up against. So yeah, I feel confident ahead of Saturday. I'm not under any illusions. I'm not expecting us to go there and win 4-0. I think it'll be a tough battle, but I do think we can just edge it.
I feel like we've got the team now as well to battle with Bromley. I feel like, again, going back to last season, if you gave us Bromley away in that season, we'd have been beaten. But now I'm very confident, although agreeing that it will be a low-scoring game, that we'll come away with 3 points again. Would I take a point at Bromley? Yes, I think I would. Although maybe it depends what kind of point, because if it's going to be a 1-1, but Notts have had 18 attempts on goal, then I'll be disappointed. But I feel like it should be a game that Notts are destined and aiming to win. I hope that's the case, obviously. I just feel like at the minute we have a lot of quality in this team, and especially if you're going to bring Jody or Crowley back in, or both, that's going to add a little bit of a extra bit of quality that can win your game. So especially if you can get both back in, as well as having your likes of your McGoldricks, your George Abbotts, your back line, and your Bass as well. We're in a good place, and there'll be a lot of players in our team that that the coaching staff at Bromley are working out how to prevent having influence on the game. No doubt about it that George Abbott will be one of them. I've no doubt someone will be following him all game. Don't think that's going to make any difference though, but that's just my personal opinion. But I'm confident, and I like to throw out score predictions. I predicted 2-0. Obviously not on the podcast, but I predicted Notts to win 2-0. McGoldrick to score any time on Saturday, so obviously that was correct. I predicted 3-1 to Notts at Swindon with McGoldrick to score any time. That obviously finished 2-1, and I predicted Notts to beat Grimsby 3-1 and Dan Crowley to score any time, and that finished 4-1. So I've not been too far away, but I will go Bromley 0, Notts County 2 for the weekend. And as an outside shout, I'll have Conor Grant to get a goal, because I feel like he's someone who's going under the radar and someone that could easily pop up with a goal. And to round it off, I'll throw that question right back at you, and let's get a score prediction from yourself.
Yeah, I'll go for a clean sheet as well. I'm going to go Notts 1, Bromley 0. And goal scorer, I will give you a goal scorer. I will go with Matty Platt.
I like it.
Rogue. I think we'll Bromley. That's what I'm feeling. I feel like we've got a little bit more solidity and strength about us this season. So yeah, Matty Platt, or I could see better. I think a defender will score. That's what I'm going. I'll go with Platt, but it could be Bedo. But we'll see. I'll go 1-0.
Not a Lewis McCarry remake of Gillingham.
I wouldn't mind it to be fair, but what a goal that was. Yeah, fair. I'm about to say we've not had a screamer like that, but we've had Didzy's curling effort, so we can't complain too much. But yeah, I wouldn't mind a Macari screamer as well.
I'm happy. I am happy you didn't say McGoldrick is your goal scorer, because I would have called you boring. So I'm happy you didn't say that. But yeah, another episode in the bag. As we enter the hour mark, 59 minutes, we are officially done and rounding it off. And as always, again, a massive thank you for the continued support. We're enjoying being back on the screens of your phones, your TVs, your tablets, your iPads, whatever it is you're watching us on, your laptop. We're enjoying being back on, and for as long as we're winning, even to be fair, even when we lose games, it's always enjoyable to come on and speak about our thoughts and have a conversation about them. But especially now we're still unbeaten, it's making that all a bit easier. And before I sign it off, how we always do, I'll hand it to you, Tom, to if there's anything else you'd like to say, my friend.
No, let's just hope that we're still unbeaten next time we record. And if that's the case, we'd have had a very, very good start to the season. And yeah, thank you for all the support. Like always, like you said, it's massively appreciated. It doesn't go under the radar. We are fully aware of who's supporting, and we're so grateful for it. So yeah, thank you for that, and look forward to next week.
Likewise, my friend. Likewise, and until we meet again, I guess with our audience, the only thing I have left to say is, come on, you unbeaten Magpies.